Hey YouTube, I'm back with another additional vlog. Today I thought I would do something related to my schoolwork and read the first chapter of the Making America textbook for you guys, because this is my homework assignment, and tomorrow we don't have school for both the college or the high school because they canceled due to the frozen ice and snow that's still on the ground and on the roads in Wayne County and several other places in the south. So, here goes. Okay, this is going to be chapter 1, pages 1 to 23. Alright, Making a New World to 1588. Chapter outline: A world of change, exploiting Atlantic opportunities, the challenges of mutual discovery and study tools. A world of change. Christopher Columbus' accidental encounter with the Western Hemisphere came after nearly 1,000 years of increasing restlessness and dramatic change that affected all the areas surrounding the Atlantic. As Muslims gained a foothold in southern Europe, word spread of the finery they obtained through trade with Africa and Asia, and enterprising individuals began looking for ways to profit by supplying luxuries to European customers or consumers. At the same time, Northern European Vikings were extending their holdings throughout many parts of Europe. Then after Columbus, millennials of relative isolation for the Western Hemisphere ended, and the natural and human environments in America were open to the flow of people, animals, and goods already circulating in this dynamic new system. American origin. It might be said that the process of making America actually began about 2.5 million years ago, with the onset of the Great Ice Ages. During the height of the Ice Ages, gigantic glaciers advanced and withdrew across the world's continents. During periods of glacial advancement, so much water was frozen into them that the sea levels dropped as much as 450 feet. Migratory animals found vast regions close to them by imposing ice fields and ventured into areas exposed by the receding sea. One such region, Thuringia, lay between the present-day Siberia and on the Asian continent and Alaska in North America, now covered by the waters of the Bering Sea and Arctic Ocean. Thuringia during the Ice Ages was a dry, frigid grassland, mostly between 70,000 and 10,000 years ago. It was perfect grazing ground for animals such as giant bison and huge-tusked woolly mammoths. Hosts of predators, including large wolves and saber-toothed cats, followed them. What was true for other species may have also been true for humans. Each of the indigenous peoples who continued to occupy the hemisphere had its own account of its origins. Some of the origin stories involve migration, others do not. The most recent biological evidence suggests that the majority of Native Americans did migrate here and descended from 3 genetic lines. The first of these, so-called Paleo-Indians, probably made the migration more than 30,000 years ago, and their population spread throughout North and South America. Then, for a period stretching to about 16,000 years ago, a sheet of ice more than 8,000 feet thick covered the northern half of North America and prevented further migration. After that, a second migration of what are called the Nadine peoples began arriving, to be followed 10,000 or so years later by a third group, the Eskimo Aleut people. DNA evidence indicates these three groups intermingled, creating a variety of Indians that Europeans had encountered when they arrived just millennia later. Beginning about 9,000 years ago, temperatures warmed, leading to the extinction of large Ice Age animals. As these staple meat sources disappeared, people everywhere in North America abandoned big game hunting and began to explore newly emerging local environments for new sources of food, clothing, and shelter and tools. In the forests that grew up to cover the eastern half of the continent, they developed finely polished stone tools, which they used to make functional and beautiful implements out of wood, bone, shell, and other materials. There and along the Pacific shore, people hollowed out massive tree trunks, making boats from which they could harvest food from inland waterways and from the sea. During this time, incoming migrants brought domesticated dogs into North America. With boats for river transportation and dogs to help carry loads on land. Native American people were able to make the best use of their local environment by moving around to different stops during different seasons of the year, following an annual round of movement from camp to camp, perhaps collecting shellfish for several weeks at the mouth of a river, then moving on to where wild strawberries were ripening, and later in the summer relocating to fields where they could harvest maturing wild onions or flowers. Although these ancestors of modern Native Americans believed in and celebrated the animating feats of the plants and animals they depended on for survival, they nonetheless engaged in large-scale environmental engineering. They used fire to clear forests of unwanted scrub and to encourage the growth of berries and other plants they found invaluable. In this way, they produced vegetables for themselves and also provided food for browsing animals, such as deer, which also increased in number with other species, while other species, less useful to people, declined. They also engaged in genetic engineering. A highly significant example comes from northern central Mexico, began perhaps 7,000 years ago. Human invention helped a wild strain of grass develop bigger seed pods with more nutritious seeds. Such intervention eventually transformed a fairly unproductive plant into an enormously nourishing and prolific food source, maize. Maize or corn, along with other engineered plants like beans, squash, and chilies, formed the basis for the agricultural revolution of North America, allowing many people to settle in larger villages for longer periods. Successful agriculture, including plant cultivation and eventually agriculture, along with population growth and the constructive use of spare time, allowed some Indians in North America to build large, ornate cities. The map of ancient America is dotted with such centers. Beginning 3,000 years ago, Ohio and Mississippi valleys became the home for a number of mound builder societies whose cities became trading and ceremonial centers that had enormous economic and social outreach. Large quantities of both technical and purely decorative artifacts from all over North America have been found at these sites. Then about 800 years ago, Midwestern mound builder sites fell into decline. People who had once congregated there withdrew to separated villages or bands. No single satisfactory explanation accounts for why this happened. Change and restlessness in the Atlantic world. During a few centuries following the death of Prophet Muhammad in 632, Muslim Arabs, Turks, and Moors made major inroads into Western Asia and North Africa, eventually encroaching on Europe's southern and eastern frontiers. During these same years, Scandinavian Vikings, who controlled the northern frontiers of Europe, began expanding southward. They also began colonizing Iceland and Greenland. Over the next decades that followed, Vikings established several outposts in the North American coast from present-day Maine to Newfoundland. Okay, this section, it matters today. It might be hard to imagine why understand the original peopling of North America and how native cultures evolved during the millennial before Columbus could possibly matter to the history of the United States, or more specifically to how we live our lives today. But without this chapter in our history, there would likely have been no U.S. at all. Europeans from the 15th century lacked the tools, the organization, the discipline, and the economic resources to conquer a true wilderness. Such a feat would have been the equivalent of our establishing a successful colony on the moon today. But the environmental and genetic engineering conducted through the millennial of North American history created a hospitable environment into which European crops, animals, and people could easily transplant themselves. And while the descendants of those Europeans may often suppose that they constructed an entirely new world in North America, the fact is they simply grasped new growth onto ancient rootstock, creating the unique hybrid that is today's America. Oh, sorry. As an exercise in counterfactual history, describe what life would have been life of Native American for European colonists in the New World. If no Indians had been present, for example, what if Columbus had found no gold or French fishermen had found no one to trade with? What if there had been no tobacco or corn? In what ways are Indian heritages of America still visible in society? And that's just if we wanted to take notes or if our teachers told us to do this, but we're not required to answer those questions. Okay, moving on with the actual text. By the year 1000, then, the heartland of Europe was surrounded by dynamic societies that served as conduits to a much broader world. Although Europeans resented and resisted both Viking and Islamic invasion, the newcomers brought with them tempting new technology, food items, and extensive knowledge. These contributions not only enriched European culture, but also improved the quality of life. For example, new farming methods increased food production so much that Europeans began to experience a population explosion. Soon, they would begin turning this new knowledge and these new tools against people who brought them. Albanians launched the Reconquista, an effort to break Islamic rule on the peninsula. Portugal attained independence in 1147, and by 1380, Portugal's King John I had united the country's various principalities under his rule. In Spain, unification took much longer, but in 1469, Ferdinand and Isabella, heirs to the rival thrones of Aragon and Castile, married and created a united Spain. 23 years later, in 1492, the Spanish subdued the last Moorish stronghold on the peninsula, completing the Reconquista. Dealings with the Vikings in the north took somewhat of a different turn. Although experts disagree about the exact timing, it appears that at some time between 1350 and 1450, a significant climatic shift called the Little Ice Age began to affect the entire world. In the Arctic and subarctic, temperatures fell, snowfall increased, and sea ice became a major hazard to navigation. This shift made it impossible for the Vikings to practice the herding, farming, and trading that supported their economy in North Atlantic. Finding themselves cut off from the vibrant North Atlantic Empire, Viking settlements in the British Isles, Russia, France, and elsewhere emerged with local populations. Okay, we're going to do this as part 2 so my video doesn't go over.